Hi, I'm Chuck Lennox. I'm a reenactor. And for 36 years in the classroom, I tried to use living history to hook my students and bring the subject to life for them. And that involved dressing the part and bringing in all sorts of stuff for the students to touch and immersing them in the music and the art and basically entire cultures, or what I could show. Well, I'm not in the classroom anymore, but I still have a room full of garb at the house. It's not costumes, it's garb. And I have this passion for bringing the past to life. That's still there. That's also why I'm involved in historical reenactment on the weekends. And I have a desire to preserve landmarks, which are going away. As a matter of fact, this episode is going to be about specific landmarks going away. I like to play history detective and amateur anthropologist and amateur archaeologist. And so what I'm doing is I'm now repurposing myself now that I'm not in the class. And what I'm doing is I'm involved in a very pretentious sounding Mission Odyssey, where I intend to visit each of the sites in Alta California that had to do with the mission era and a bit beyond. So 18th and 19th century stuff. Also anything that's Native American that can fit into this framework. And I'm visiting each of the missions, the Asistencias, spin-off missions, the Estancias, those are ranchos supporting the missions, the Presidios, those are the fortifications designed to protect groups of missions, and anything else that catches my fancy. Well, I was at the Presidio in Monterey, and I ended up coming across something that I had never really heard about. That in addition to the Presidios protecting the missions, or groups of missions, there were also castillos, or fortifications. And every one of those is gone. Every one of those is just basically a plaque, and the guns have gone someplace else that were there. But I have to head back to the Presidio at Monterey to tell that story, because it interests me. And it might go away. So I hope you stick with me on my journey. There was a British explorer named George Vancouver who had some interesting observations about Alta California. And he was exploring the coast as well as going out to the Sandwich Islands, and this was at a time when the Spanish really were not interested in having visitors, and official policy was no cooperation with foreign powers, no trade with foreign powers. They wanted Alta California all to themselves. And in spite of this, Vancouver hung around. Vancouver didn't seem to have a really high opinion of life at the missions and the Presidios. And by his time period, there were 4 Presidios already, and even wrote down numbers of how many troops were at each, like about 60 for San Diego, Santa Barbara, and Monterey, and only 36 in San Francisco. He noted that those Presidios were probably able to withstand domestic problems and take care of them. So in a way, he kind of predicted the Chumash Revolt in 1824, about 30 years ahead. And he also noted that the Presidios probably wouldn't stand a chance when it came to stopping any sort of foreign invasion. So he pretty much predicted the effects of Hippolyte Bouchard and his rampage in 1818. Now, I can't imagine that when he wrote about this, I can't imagine that the Spanish got a hold of his book and went, oh, we better change some things. And I can't imagine that Vancouver actually was talking to the Spanish about, you guys think this will protect you? Are you insane? You know, or you must have incredible courage. So what I'm envisioning is he probably did not have much of a poker face, and when he saw the defenses, he just kind of did that and probably try to cover it up. But that same year that Vancouver had been in Alta California, and you know, we're talking about Monterey here specifically, action was taken by the Spanish. 1792, a building program was begun at 3 of the 4 Presidios, and the program included the idea of building a castillo or a fort at San Diego to guard the bay there, at San Francisco, and at Monterey. So Monterey is the first one. El Castillo is going to get built. And there are some elaborate plans of how it was supposed to look. And then there's reality. Because the next year when Vancouver came back, he was horrified looking at rotting log parapets, some rusting cannon, and said even the supports for the cannon were falling apart. So that's going to end up changing. And, you know, more building is going to take place. But in 1794, El Castillo de San Joaquin will end up getting built to help guard San Francisco Bay. And in 1797, El Castillo de Grejios will get built to guard San Diego Bay. Okay, so at least we've got some construction going on here, and I think each of these castillos had about like 11 artillery pieces. The castillo that was built at Monterey, El Castillo, it is designed to protect the Bay of Monterey, or at least the Presidio of Monterey. You know, it's just on a little point of land, just a little ways away within cannon shot. And it actually works, you know, to some degree. But there's going to be a fundamental problem that's associated with it. It provided defense from people coming by sea. What if they attack by land? I've mentioned the pirate Hippolyte Bouchard. I feel almost like you have to automatically say the notorious pirate Hippolyte Bouchard a number of times in this Mission Odyssey. I mentioned him with regard to Mission San Juan Capistrano, which he raided. I mentioned him in regard to Mission San Gabriel because one of his crew deserted and ended up building a mill there. I ended up mentioning him in regards to Mission San Buenaventura, Mission Santa Barbara, the Presidio in Santa Barbara, both of the Asistencias there. Mentioned him with regard to Mission La Purísima, Mission San Luis Obispo, and the Asistencia Santa Margarita. He even influenced Mission Soledad. Well, this gets to be his first appearance at the Presidio in Monterey. What happens is in October of 1818, Governor Sola ends up getting word from a sailor who had been in the Sandwich Islands that Hippolyte Bouchard was planning to raid the California coast. He was coming from the Sandwich Islands, and he managed to acquire another ship and had recruited a crew for them, and now had a fleet of 2 ships, but he had 340 men between him and something like 52 guns. And Governor Sola realized what a threat Bouchard was to a very sparsely populated and poorly defended Alta California. There were only 4 Presidios, and he had only 43 men that were here. And so what he did is he immediately passed the word to the different Presidios to be alert, and he passed word to the missions to box up all the gold and silver, any religious relics, anything valuable, and to hide those away in specified locations, and that the vaqueros at each of the missions were to drive their cattle and herds inland as far as possible in order to keep the pirates from replenishing their supplies. So the Castillo is ready, and it gets its first real test in 1818 when the pirate Hippolyte Bouchard shows up. He doesn't show up in October like he was supposed to. He shows up in November when people were already discounting the threat. And what ended up happening is he tried a frontal assault. Hey, he had 340 in his crews, on the 2 ships. He had 52 guns, no problem, except that the frontal assault failed. Largely in part due to the marksmanship of the soldados in the Presidio and at El Castillo. And the Santa Rosa took damage, and Bouchard lost 5 privateers, and they stepped back and they rethought their options. And then what they decided to do was they sailed around to Point Pinos and landed with 200 troops at Point Pinos, and they marched inland, basically between Mission Carmel and El Castillo. And with El Castillo, the guns are all pointed that way. What happens if you get attacked from behind? Well, we know what happens. The soldados got jumped, and they lost control of El Castillo, and Bouchard's men took the cannons, and they pointed them at the Presidio in the town, and they started firing. So at this point, it's a loss. And so the Presidio was burned to the ground, all of it except this building, which, by the way, is the only remaining building from the Presidio. Okay, so he said, spare the chapel, leave it alone. And he also had the mission at Carmel spared. Just leave it alone, don't do it. And failing to really get a lot of supplies here, he moved on south towards Santa Barbara, hoping to find something. Following Bouchard's attack upon Monterey, the Presidio did get rebuilt. Those repairs proceeded slowly to reestablish the capital of Alta California. Within a couple of years, Mexico, struggling since 1810, at last achieved independence from Spain. New priorities were established. The Presidio, although rebuilt, became less important, yielding to the custom house. Alta California needed money, and Mexico, instead of continuing to restrict trade as Spain had done, actively encouraged it. After all, Monterey was a hide and tallow port, a whaling station, and was close to major sea otter fields. There was also a French explorer and merchant named Auguste Odyssey, who arrived in California 1827, stayed till 1828, and he had some interesting observations about the missions and the Presidios. When he visited the Presidio at Santa Barbara, and he kind of assumed that the Presidio at Monterey was the same. He said that if you were to consider it a defensive bastion, you had to be extremely generous. He didn't have a high opinion of it. He also noted that the numbers were more like 100 soldados per Presidio, which might or might not have been accurate. Duatsili also noted how few native Californians there were at the missions, especially at Mission Carmel. So this would probably explain why one of the major functions of the Presidios was to track down runaway neophytes, which they'd been doing since 1813. Of course, I have too much stuff. I found out something really cool, so I have to head back. So I hope you'll stick with me on my journey.